Imagine waking up to the news that foreign drones, Russian-made drones, have not just entered but been shot down over the airspace of a NATO member country.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a hypothetical scenario. This actually happened just this past Wednesday. Over Poland?
Exactly. So today we're taking a deep dive into this, well, unprecedented Russian drone incursion into Polish airspace. We'll look at the flurry of international responses that followed and that really intense debate about whether this was all some kind of mistake or, a deliberate provocation.
Mm-hmm. And we've gathered the sources you shared, articles, official statements, expert analyses to really break it down.
Our mission here is to help you understand not just the basic facts, but why this incident is so significant right now.
And what it really means, for the bigger picture, the geopolitical implications unfolding right there on NATO's eastern flank.
Okay, let's unpack this. Maybe we should start with the core event itself. What exactly happened in those early hours on Wednesday?
Right. So early Wednesday, multiple Russian drones crossed into Polish airspace. That's the first key point.
Multiple. How many are we talking about?
Well, we know for sure that 3 of these Russian drones were shot down. But others apparently crashed to the ground and were found later, spread across eastern Poland.
Crashed or were shot down?
Some shot down, some found crashed. In total, parts from 17 Russian-made drones were recovered in eastern Poland. 17.
17. Wow. That's a lot more than just one straying off course.
Exactly. Thankfully, and this is important, no injuries or major damage were reported from these incidents. So, that's a relief.
Definitely. But still, 17 drones.
Right. And what makes this incident, I think, a potential turning point isn't just the number, it's how it immediately seemed to, escalate the definition of an incursion.
How so?
Well, before, aerial trespasses into NATO countries, they're often kind of downplayed, maybe accidental, isolated things.
Right, a single plane, a brief crossing.
Precisely. But this, with 17 drones recovered and Poland immediately calling for a UN Security Council session, it sort of forces NATO to publicly rethink the threshold for what constitutes a direct challenge.
Regardless of whether Russia meant to do it.
Exactly. Intent becomes almost secondary to the impact. It feels like a shift from isolated incidents to maybe a perceived pattern of systemic vulnerability that demands a much stronger collective response, not just, a diplomatic note.
Okay, so if this was seen as such a significant shift, how quickly did Poland and NATO actually respond?
The response was fast, very fast. Polish and allied NATO fighter jets, specifically Dutch F-35s, I believe, were scrambled to intercept the drones.
Scrambled to intercept.
Yes, and this is key. It marks the first time such a direct interception response happened for aerial Russian military incursions into NATO airspace since the full-scale Ukraine invasion started back in February 2022.
The first time. That's huge.
It is. The speed and the fact that Allied jets were involved immediately,
Yeah.
it really signals a clear shift in how these events are being handled. Much more seriously, much more directly.
So beyond scrambling jets, Poland took it further, right? You mentioned the UN Security Council. They went straight to the international stage.
They did. And you have to ask, what was their strategic thinking there? Why escalate it so high diplomatically?
Yeah, what was the calculus?
Well, it seems pretty clear they saw this as a moment to really grab international attention and, crucially, lock in support from allies.
So requesting that UN Security Council session, scheduled for Friday.
Exactly. That move elevates the incident immediately. It says Poland sees this as incredibly severe, and it demands a public global accounting for Russia's actions, whether they were intentional or not.
It's basically saying, this isn't just about us, this affects everyone's security.
Precisely. It internationalizes the issue right away.
And back on the ground, were there immediate security changes in Poland or the region?
Oh, absolutely. You could feel the nervousness. Warsaw announced new restrictions for drones and small air traffic along its eastern borders, the ones with Belarus and Ukraine.
Tightening up the airspace.
Yes, and it wasn't just Poland. Neighboring Latvia also announced its eastern airspace would be closed for a week.
So a regional reaction.
Definitely. It underscores this wasn't seen as just a Polish problem. It felt like a regional alert, a need to create buffer zones, increase vigilance. It shows a shared understanding that this is a collective challenge.
And Poland's defense minister, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, he addressed parliament pretty directly, didn't he? Talked about history.
He did, and his words were quite powerful. He said, let me get the quote right, "Poland has repeatedly heard words of solidarity and empty gestures throughout its history. Today, we have concrete declarations."
Concrete declarations. That's a strong phrase.
It is. It's a message born from, you could say, historical frustration with just talk. He's essentially saying, look, this time, words aren't enough. We expect, and frankly, we're now seeing, real, tangible military commitments from our allies.
A shift from just verbal support to actual hardware and troops on the ground.
Exactly. Practical reinforcement.
Okay, so let's talk about those concrete declarations. What exactly are NATO members doing? It sounds like they really stepped up.
They did, and quickly. It wasn't just talk. We're seeing significant commitments.
Like what?
Well, the Netherlands, for example, committed to deploying air defense systems, artillery, and about 300 troops to Poland.
Okay, air defense, artillery troops, that's substantial.
And the Czech Republic is sending helicopters and 100 soldiers. Germany said it would, quote, intensify its engagement along NATO's eastern border, expanding air policing over Poland.
Germany's stepping up too. And France.
France as well. President Macron announced France would send 3 Rafale fighter jets to help protect Polish airspace. He was very clear, saying, we will not yield to Russia's growing intimidation.
Rafales. So top-line fighters.
Yes. And there was also mention that the French and British might deploy even more aircraft to secure NATO's eastern flank. It's a broad coalition response.
So this rapid deployment, all these different assets, troops, artillery, jets, air defense, what does that tell us about NATO's mindset right now?
I think it shows this isn't just symbolic flag waving. It's a concrete strategic adjustment. Deploying advanced systems like this, especially from major Western European powers, signals a new level of urgency.
It suggests the eastern flank isn't seen as some distant buffer anymore.
Exactly. It's now viewed as an active, immediate front line. It needs real, substantial reinforcement, not just promises. In a way, it validates the concerns Poland and the Baltic states have had for years.
Brings their security concerns right to the core of NATO's immediate operational focus.
Right. It's like a real-time adaptation of their deterrence strategy.
And what about the U.S.? What was their official line?
The U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, put it very plainly on social media. He said the U.S. stood by our NATO allies in the face of these airspace violations and will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Every inch. That's Article 5 language, essentially.
Absolutely. It's a firm reiteration of the collective defense principle. Coming from the U.S., it carries immense weight. It's meant to remove any ambiguity about their commitment.
A clear warning signal.
Definitely. It reinforces the credibility of NATO's overall deterrence.
Okay, so we have this unified military and diplomatic response, at least from most European allies in the U.S. But then there's this really fascinating split, isn't there, on the why?
Ah, yes. The core debate. Was this a mistake or was it malice? A genuine error or a deliberate test?
And this is where things get, well, politically charged and quite divergent.
Couldn't be clearer. The contrast. You have the U.S. President Donald Trump, who suggested more than once that the incursion might have happened by mistake.
He posted that "here we go" message first, then walked it back a bit.
Sort of. He posted that initially, kind of ambiguously, then later told reporters it could have been a mistake.
But Polish leaders, they weren't buying that at all, were they?
Not even slightly. They were firm, unified in rejecting the mistake theory. President Karol Nawrocki called it, quite explicitly, nothing more than an attempt to test our capabilities in response.
A test of NATO mechanisms.
Yes. He said it was an attempt to test the mechanisms of action within NATO and our ability to respond.
And Prime Minister Tusk, I remember seeing his comment.
Very direct. Donald Tusk posted, we would also wish that the drone attack on Poland was a mistake, but it wasn't, and we know it. Just flat out rejected it.
No room for doubt there.
None. And the Deputy Minister of Defense, Cezary Tomczyk, even seemed to address Trump directly on TV, saying, there's no question of a mistake. This was a deliberate Russian attack.
Wow. And the foreign minister?
Radoslaw Sikorski linked it directly to the wider war. He pointed out that on the same night 19 drones crossed into Poland, Ukraine faced 400 drones plus 40 missiles. His point was blunt. These were not mistakes.
So a very stark difference in interpretation between Warsaw and, at least, President Trump.
It is. And it's not just about intelligence, you feel. It seems to reflect fundamentally different geopolitical perspectives, maybe different priorities.
How so?
Well, the Polish view, which seems shared by many other European capitals and the EU, they also called it a Russian test, sees a pattern of aggressive probing.
While President Trump's view leans towards downplaying the provocation.
Perhaps, yeah. Maybe trying to avoid escalation or maybe for other domestic political reasons. But that difference in interpreting intent really shapes how urgently and how forcefully each side feels they need to respond.
Right. So you have these strong political statements, but what about the official military assessment? Did NATO command come down definitively on intent?
That's where it gets more nuanced. Expert opinions are generally split, actually. And interestingly, NATO's top military commander, General Alexis Grinkowicz, was quite cautious.
Cautious.
On Thursday, he acknowledged publicly that it was, quote, not yet known whether the act had been intentional. He even added that the precise number of drones which had crossed was still to be determined.
So the military side was holding back from declaring definitive intent, even while politicians were drawing conclusions.
Exactly. A level of official ambiguity remained on the military side.
Is that ambiguity significant in itself? Does keeping the intent question open serve a purpose?
It could, yes. It maintains a certain flexibility. It allows all parties to take defensive actions without necessarily triggering a full-blown escalation based on a confirmed hostile act. It leaves room for interpretation, perhaps.
And Russia's response, or lack thereof.
Pretty much standard Kremlin playbook. They said they had no further comment on the claims they deliberately stoked tensions.
Which can be read multiple ways.
Absolutely. Dismissive, strategic ambiguity, avoiding direct confrontation. It keeps their options open, but in the short term, it certainly doesn't do anything to ease the tension. It reinforces the idea they aren't overly concerned about Polish or NATO reactions.
Okay, connecting this drone incident to the bigger picture.
Right.
You said it didn't happen in a vacuum. What else is going on that's adding to the anxiety in Eastern Europe?
Right. Context is key here. We have these major joint military exercises, Belarus and Russia, called Zapad 2025. They're due to start, well, basically right now on Friday.
Zapad. Those exercises always make neighbors nervous, don't they?
They do. And Poland explicitly called these upcoming maneuvers very aggressive. So much so that Poland actually closed its border crossings with the Belarus starting Thursday.
Closed the border specifically because of the Zapad exercises.
Yes, citing national security reasons in connection with the Zapad maneuvers. That's a pretty drastic step.
Wow. Closing a border, that really highlights how seriously they view the combination of the drone incident and these exercises. It's like the cumulative effect.
Exactly. It's not just one thing. It's the pattern, the timing. Each event seems to ratchet up the tension. Closing the border sends a very clear signal to Moscow about Poland's level of alarm.
How did Russia react to the border closure?
Predictably, not well. They urged Poland to reopen it, warning of serious damage to business and freedom of movement, and told Warsaw to think about the consequences. Classic pressure tactics.
Imply military pressure, then complain about the economic fallout of the reaction. How big are these Zapad drills compared to previous ones?
They're actually smaller this year. The last big Zapad, just before the Ukraine war, reportedly involved around 200,000 troops. This year, estimates are closer to 30,000.
Still, 30,000 troops exercising right on the border.
In the current climate, yes, it's still a significant show of force. And as you said, Poland's decision to close the border really shows how these events are linked. The drone incident, mistake or not, definitely amplifies the perceived threat from these drills. It creates this palpable sense of risk that NATO feels it can't ignore.
And Ukraine, of course, is living with Russian aerial attacks constantly. President Zelensky weighed in.
He did. He actually offered to provide guidance and training to Western military folks on how to handle these kinds of Russian aerial attacks, leveraging Ukraine's, well, hard-won experience.
That's quite an offer, sharing real-world current combat knowledge.
Highly significant, yes. It's practical knowledge Western militaries might lack. And beyond that, Zelensky called for a joint European air defense system, an air shield, he called it, to counter Russia's, quote, insolent behavior.
An air shield for Europe, pushing for a much more integrated defense posture.
Exactly. Moving beyond just national systems to a truly collective European defense, directly responding to the kind of vulnerabilities shown by this drone incident in Poland.
Okay, so bringing this all together, what does this complex situation mean for you, the listener? What's the takeaway for the broader European security landscape?
Well, I think it raises a really important question. How does an event like this, where the intent is murky but the impact is clear, how does that reshape strategic thinking?
For NATO, for its Eastern members.
Right. What we've seen is this mix. Immediate military action, intense diplomatic pressure, very different political interpretations battling it out, all layered over existing geopolitical tensions.
But the bottom line seems to be more action on the Eastern flank.
Definitely. The clear focus now is on rapid deployment, enhanced vigilance. It shows that even what might seem like lower-level incursions can now trigger significant collective action. It forces a reevaluation of security.
It really highlights the challenge of deterrence when the lines between accident and intent are so often deliberately blurred.
Precisely. And the speed and scope of the Allied response this time, it really does suggest a fundamental shift. NATO seems to be moving from a theoretical Article 5 promise to demonstrating immediate, tangible military capability right on its borders.
So from a few drones crossing a border on a Wednesday morning to a UN Security Council meeting and major military deployments by Friday, it shows how fast things can escalate and change the whole conversation about European security.
Absolutely. And the sources you shared really gave us a detailed look at this unfolding situation. We saw the solidarity, yes, but also the swift military moves and those conflicting ideas about the threat itself.
It's definitely complex, but the determination to defend NATO territory seems clearer than ever.
Undeniably clear, yes.
So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is this. What does this incident, and especially the divided opinions on why it happened, tell us about the future? The future of deterrence, of de-escalation, in this age of, well, persistent low-level conflict.
How do nations respond effectively when the intent behind something is officially unknown, but the security implications feel so incredibly real?
Something to definitely keep thinking about as the situation develops.